This is my thoughts on Bungie from Astacross, and I'm going to give a deep dive and reaction to this video because he actually brings up some really interesting points about where the Destiny community is in regards to our good faith of Bungie, the company. Let's jump right into it.
Fellas, I want to take a moment to talk about an alternative reality, a world in which we as the Destiny community would have embraced Marathon. And I know
Oh, this is going to get very spicy very fast, I see.
some of you are very much excited about what Bungie's going to be cooking up next, but I would argue and say that the majority of Destiny players don't necessarily have a lot of love for Marathon. You see, from the moment it was announced, from the moment that Bungie came out and said, hey, this is our next game that we're making, it's going to have all these features, including
People were pissed when they heard dedicated servers, especially because the PvP community has been asking for that in Destiny 2 for years.
dedicated servers. Destiny players immediately became defensive, and understandably so. You see, at the time of its announcement was May 24th, 2023, just a few months right after the launch of Lightfall. And if you were to look on paper, Lightfall looked like a success. Matter of fact, it still holds the highest peak numbers on Steam, even beating out the likes of the Final Shape.
It probably has the peak highest numbers and then maybe the peak lowest. Look at that just after January 2024. That's pretty rough.
But those numbers are not inducive of what actually occurred. Lightfall was a disaster. It was the first real expansion post Sony's completion of its acquisition of Bungie, and the expectations were high. Everyone was looking at Lightfall. Hype levels were at an all-time high. Strand was a new subclass, and many people were saying that this was going to be our Infinity War moment, the first half that would lead us into endgame, that being the final shape. Narratively, though, Lightfall was a disaster. Its pacing was awful. Lore-wise, you could tell that it was filler. Even Bife came out right after the expansion. And I would say Bife was probably the first one that really set the tone because I was already feeling some kind of way about Lightfall. I was perplexed by its story, its character development. I didn't really understand
The MacGuffin. Get Nimbus off the screen right now. Oh my god, Lightfall was such a disaster.
what anything was, the veil, the radial mass. And it seems like Bungie's only answer to this was that, hey, you would find out more over the course of a year, which nobody liked. And if Bife couldn't even understand what the hell was going on, how in the hell were we supposed to understand what was going on? So fast forward to May 2023, Marathon is announced. And the reception, although yes, to players that weren't playing Destiny, I feel like those folks were excited. They're like, oh, Bungie's working on another game. Cool. But to Destiny players, it did feel like a slap in the face because it felt like we were the forgotten stepchild. Now, I know some of you may be thinking, but Cross, wouldn't this be the case for any other studio? Old player bases feeling abandoned for the new hot thing that the studio is working on.
No, not really. Honestly, I think most gamers love their studios and they want to see their studios grow. We, the Destiny community, have such a different opinion of Bungie, though. Oh my god. After all the monetization practices they've put us through, we do not feel the same way that other gamers feel about their favorite gaming studio.
You'd be surprised how uncommon that actually is. You see, many developers out there that have remained successful in the industry for years have actually garnered enough goodwill that when they do announce the next big thing, they're welcomed with open arms. I'm by no means a dedicated Warframe player, but I absolutely love Digital Extremes, and I've had the best time playing Warframe earlier this year, going through every facet of its story, and my god, does that game have a ton of content. But then
and their community absolutely loves them. Like, seriously, the Warframe community is really doing everything right from a community perspective and from like a good faith perspective, like he brought up here.
I was immensely surprised to see that Digital Extremes was working on another game, that being Soulframe. And what was even more interesting was the polar opposite of what I experienced with the Destiny community. The Warframe community was excited. They were tuning in for the live streams for both Soulframe and Warframe, cheering on the developers at Digital Extreme, and many who were dedicated Warframe players were also playing Soulframe, giving invaluable feedback to DE on how to make Soulframe a better experience. And so far, that game has seen multiple updates over the years, each one making the game even better. And look, I was actually shocked. I was expecting to see blowback. When I saw Soulframe, I was like, wow, I bet they have a mad community on their hands. But it turns out that wasn't the case at all. And really, it's because of DE themselves. You see, Digital Extremes had shown over the years to the Warframe community its level of commitment, its ability to navigate through feedback, its willingness to make sacrifices on the monetary side of things in order to make the player experience better.
And that's really what Bungie should have done with the final shape. We were hoping that the final shape was the beginning of the golden age, right? And that would guide us and lead us into the hype for Marathon. And the final shape did launch well, but the follow-up, not so much.
They essentially had was an endless tank of goodwill. Even looking at the Steam chart numbers, Warframe by no means is breaking the bank, but by God, is it consistent.
Staying consistently over 50K, looks like.
Got peaks here and there, of course, but you've got a base there that continues to be there for DE over the long haul. Something of which Destiny 2 currently right now.
Jeez, this Destiny 2, but notice the difference. We are almost dipping below 20K for Destiny 2, okay? But it is a comparison of 1 month with Destiny 2, and he did 3 years for Warframe. So I'd have to see the difference between all that.
Is struggling with, which Bungie recognizes, which is exactly why we're getting all these core changes coming in Edge of Fate. Now, whether or not that's going to be enough, we'll have to just wait and see. Regardless, though, what is very apparent is that the controversy around Marathon has been met with almost gleeful exuberance from Destiny players. Here we have.
Oh, Destiny players hate this game. I think initially we were indifferent. We didn't really care. But after we kind of realized that a lot of resources and a lot of the money that we invested into Destiny 2 kind of went to Bungie to develop this game instead, you burned some bridges there, Bungie.
A situation where you have majority of one community within your own studio praying for your downfall. Now, I'm not gonna lie, guys, it's been entertaining. Seriously, reading your comments, watching things unfold, seeing people running around in the tower with the name "Plagiarism will make me God."
Too far, too far.
God damn it, man. Destiny players, you guys know how to troll. But covering the potential delay that seems almost certain that is coming from Marathon just reconfirmed how Destiny players
Covering the potential to, oh yeah, he must have made this video just before. The delay did in fact happen, obviously.
feel about this game. And that brings us to what Destiny players truly believe. Marathon killed Destiny 3. Now, outwardly looking in, I can see why people say that. That moment where Luke Smith was on the camera talking to us before Final Shape was about to launch, telling us that this definitely wasn't going to be it for Destiny, to then just.
Now, to be fair, Marathon didn't directly kill Destiny 3. Obviously, Bungie has a certain budget where they were putting them towards all these different games and these incubation projects. And I think that that Project Payback was meant to be a variant of Destiny 2. And I think that's the right direction to go. But obviously, you know, you could create a narrative where, you know, they had a certain budget and they could have spent money and developmental effort to make Destiny 3. But instead, they obviously their biggest project was Marathon. And so, you know, by extension, that means that they chose Marathon over Destiny 3, right? So I can see how you get there, but I feel like it's a little more complicated than that.
Suddenly be let go 1 month after the Final Shape launches. This left us all extremely perplexed. No, the Final Shape didn't peak out at the numbers that Lightfall did, but it wasn't that much under. And arguably, it had the best numbers, at least from a metric standpoint, from search volume to folks watching the raid race. You can't tell me that the Final Shape wasn't a success. However, despite its
The Final Shape was a huge success, surely.
success, a portion of the studio was let go. And many have assumed
That was
it's
messed
not
up.
because the Final
That was actually messed up. Sometimes we forget about those details, I feel like, because Final Shape was a massive success and then they immediately laid off more people. So bad.
Shape wasn't successful. It's simply because Bungie would rather allocate their funds toward Marathon rather than Destiny. But fellas, it goes deeper than that. You see, these funds should have been allocated correctly years prior. You see, following the launch of the Final Shape, we should have been met with what was going to be coming next for Destiny. And that should have been met with optimism and potentially a sequel. But instead, we were met with what appeared to be a major pullback across the board for upcoming expansions and massive layoffs occurring. And by the way, this was the second wave of layoffs that hit Bungie, all of which seem to center around Marathon and its delays. Now, let me be clear about what I'm going to say to you now. Marathon is not what's killing Destiny. Leadership is. The folks who decided that instead of actually developing a sequel, it was much better to develop anything.
Now, I have a bone to pick a little bit with this, because one thing I think we should understand in terms of the context of this is that Destiny 2 came out, right? And it was meant to be a whole new game, right? We've kind of done this. We've ran this race already. And when it came out, it wasn't different enough from Destiny 1 originally. I mean, they kind of brought some of the good things over and missed a bunch of the most like important things, like random rolls on weapons, right? So in terms of Bungie's like creative abilities, right? It's massive budget for Destiny 2. I feel like if you had done that over again, right? Where we went from Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, if you were to look at the pattern, right, Destiny 3 could very well be a massive flop and could be a bad idea in general. I don't know that there's enough creative headspace within the Destiny universe to make a Destiny 3 that doesn't reuse a good majority of Destiny 2 assets, and therefore everyone gets angry at Bungie when they launch Destiny 3 and say, hey, now you get to rebuy everything again for the third time, right? I think that would be a big disaster. So this is my biggest bone to pick with Destiny 3 conversations is what exactly would it do that Destiny 2 doesn't do, right? What Destiny 2 could never do, right? The only thing that people tend to bring up is things like the engine, right? You could go on to Unreal Engine, which clearly has very more advanced or than the Tiger engine we're on right now. And there's some potential there, right? But again, even if you go to a new engine, right? The engine conversation is a good one. What is the actual game doing differently? Like, it's going to look very similar, and you're going to feel like I just paid for a whole new game, or I just paid for the same things I already paid for. So it's a big problem, I think, which is why I think the best route forward for Bungie was to continue making Destiny 2 in perpetuity as they're doing, more expansions, more content, more loot, and that's what people want. They don't want to lose their loot, and then make a sister game in comparison. That was Project Payback. Project Payback was meant to be another game in the Destiny universe. They were experimenting with what it would look like in third person, so that way you're not stealing too much from the Destiny 2 fan base, right? I think that was really the best possible route. It was Luke Smith that was working on that with Mark Noseworthy, so like two of the best and brightest at Bungie, right? They brought us some of the best Destiny 2 content. That got canned for Marathon. That I'm actually the most mad about, more so than the idea of Destiny 3, because Destiny 3 exists in my mind as just this like unicorn that no one can ever really pinpoint, like what exactly would it look like where no one's mad that they're not paying again for the assets they paid for in Destiny 2 or even in Destiny 1 at this point. Could you imagine in Destiny 3 when they bring back the Gjallarhorn for the third time, right? People are gonna be like, what the hell?
Else but that. You see, it wasn't just Marathon that Bungie was developing, it was tons of other games that they were trying to take a stab at. Whether it was Gummy Bears, which by the way has been offloaded and sent to Sony, or Matter, which was canned, or the number of other incubation projects. For some unknown reason, Bungie didn't want to make a D3. And that's because it really comes back to what was brought to us many years ago, prior to the Sony acquisition. That meeting took place between Bungie and a summit of creators. The question that was brought up, what is it that Destiny 3 could do that Destiny 2 couldn't already accomplish?
This is the question. This is the billion-dollar question, right? And it's a very important one to have a clear, succinct answer. And so far, no one can actually answer this. And the problem is, if you can't answer this, then there's really no reason to make a Destiny 3. Until you can actually say there's like something that Destiny 2 could never do, then all you're doing is you're basically just taking all the loot that you've worked hard for and all the cosmetics that you've paid so much for in Destiny 2 and literally flushing them down the toilet, all the money and all the time you've invested, flushing it down the toilet for the ability to just do it all over again. And that's the biggest problem. Destiny 3, with Bungie's current creative vision and what we saw from a Destiny 1 to Destiny 2, would kill the Destiny franchise completely at this point in time until, again, this question can be answered.
It's a fair question. What is it that a D3 can do that a Destiny 2 couldn't? But understand the time that this question was posed to us was in 2019. That was 6 years ago nearly. Things were different.
I mean, even if it was posed 6 years ago, it's still a question that's been relevant every year since. Like, it's still a question that's relevant right now in 2025. It'll always be the biggest question. And as soon as that question can be answered definitively, that this is what Destiny 3 will accomplish that Destiny 2 can't, then it will immediately go into production. Like, Bungie's not stupid. They understand that launching a Destiny 3 with getting everyone behind them is a very, very lucrative, very smart idea, right? Like, if they can actually get everyone behind them. But right now, a lot of people aren't behind them. I think a lot of people are excited for Destiny 3, not realizing what it would cost them with Destiny 2.
Different. Timelines were different. And at that time, Destiny 2 was still almost a new game. It was just now coming to Steam. Its presence had only really been on consoles and Battle.net. Many of us sat there and thought to ourselves, well, hey, I like Destiny 2. That is a good question. What is it that Destiny 3 could do that Destiny 2 couldn't already do? And at the time, most said, okay, I'm down to see what Destiny can become over the years. What we were not expecting was Destiny 2 to be it forever. Our assumption, or at least my assumption, was that Destiny 2 would at least case play out through the Light and Darkness saga, and that there would be a jump to Destiny 3. And it wouldn't just be a jump in terms of story or lore or systematic changes, but instead a technological jump. And if you think we don't need some sort of big jump in our engine, look no further than the fact that you're not getting a vault increase going into
We are getting a vault increase with the expansion right after the Edge of Fate.
to Edge of Fate. That vault size that you see right now, that's it, fellas. You're gonna have the same vault size, while simultaneously having to farm for a multitude of new weapons and armor, most of which are gonna be necessary to engage in the new content. You see, the question
I mean, I guess what he's posing here is that because we're not getting a new because of the Tiger engine, we're not getting a vault expansion with the launch of Edge of Fate, but we will be getting one. But we do know that we're getting one afterwards. So I'm not exactly sure. I mean, it would be nice to get one with the Edge of Fate. Obviously, that's the best. I'm not sure exactly that you could attribute that as a fault of the Tiger engine necessarily, but if that is the way that actually works, then sure, then obviously Unreal Engine would be better. I mean, I think we can all agree that Unreal Engine would be a better engine for any game. Like, it's just the best. It's the most advanced engine, and it would be incredible. But the problem is that you would not be able to port over the assets from Destiny 2 into Unreal Engine. You have to remake all of them from the ground up, which in turn is why people pose the idea of Destiny 3. But again, still the core problem is you could put it on Unreal Engine, 12, like some unrealistic engine that we've never even seen before, right? It doesn't really matter if you're still fighting against the Fallen, the Hive, and the Vex, right? And you're still in first person and you're still running around shooting hand cannons. It's going to be Destiny. And when you use those weapons and use those abilities, you're going to be using Destiny weapons and abilities. And you're going to feel like you got sold the same thing again, like you just paid all this money in Destiny 2, and then now you have to buy a new game. And rebuy back all those assets and all those cosmetics that you spent so much money for, right? And then you're also going to be less incentivized to buy cosmetics for Destiny 3 because you'll know that at one point in time, this game will be a legacy game. At one point in time, this game will not receive updates. And so why buy cosmetics for a game that might be gone 3 years from now? When Destiny 4 comes out, right? Like this is the problem, right? Destiny 3 doesn't solve all problems. It actually creates a bunch of new problems. It does solve one problem, which is that it's exciting, but that's the only problem it solves, in my opinion.
that was brought to us should have been phrased like this: how long are you willing to accept Destiny 2 before you say enough is enough, I'm one in Destiny 3? What started
I love this question, actually. This is a good question, which is and an interesting idea, which is if Destiny 2 goes on and on and on and gets so boring, right? Then how long are you eventually just going to be like, dude, shut up about hating Destiny 3, Lucky, right? Just get on board with Destiny 3 like everyone else, right? This is the question that people have posed to me before. But I would still present the same idea to you, which is that if Destiny 2 goes on and on and on, and Bungie has zero creative vision and zero ability to create unique and interesting things within the Destiny 2 universe, what gives you so much faith that they're going to suddenly do that with Destiny 3? How are they going to suddenly get this like spark of imagination and creativity with adding a 3 to the end of the game, right? That doesn't make any sense at all. You have to take a step back and realize that even if that is the case, if Destiny 2 runs itself into the ground, then that's what Bungie is capable of. Destiny 3 doesn't save that, in my opinion.
Started out here as a video today talking about Marathon and why people have not adopted it, and why the Destiny community themselves are not very receptive to Bungie as a whole. It's really a deeper issue than this. The tank of goodwill at Bungie has been bone dry. And what was even
This is true.
so crazy is that after Final Shape, we actually got a little bit of reserves in that tank. But the massive layoffs told a different story to us. And even though I am cautiously optimistic about Edge of Fate, I can't help but wonder if Bungie is really trying to give us more Destiny by attempting to do less.
This is my biggest criticism, actually. This is what we've been talking about a lot lately, where I feel like we're trying to charge people the same price for less content. Again and again and again. And basically Bungie is doing this so much. They're trying to see how far they can get away with this, right? And it's getting bad, right? It's getting to a point where we're about to have a new expansion and there's just going to be nothing, just a new title screen change and you pay your $100 or something, right? Like it's getting dry, all right? It's getting dry.
this is not going to work out for them. This is not going to work out for Marathon. Doing less is exactly why Marathon should be delayed. Doing less is why Destiny 3 was never in production and should have been in production years ago. And you know what's so sad about all of this? Is that there is a good chance that another wave of layoffs will occur without it truly having an effect on anyone in leadership. I've made comparisons.
There's going to be another wave of layoffs. Yeah, I would agree. I think there's going to be another wave. I think that with the current trends with Destiny 2, and I think that when we get the next wave of layoffs, I think that for solidarity, I think Pete Parsons steps down. I don't think he survives another one. I don't think he can continue to be the CEO after 3 rounds of layoffs. But I do think that after this next calendar year is up, I think we're going to see a lower population, unless they're holding some crazy cards up their sleeve. I think we're going to see a significant decline and lowering of population. And in the process, we're going to see a wave of layoffs, and then Pete goes. That's my prediction for about 1 year from now.
Here to digital extremes. I've made comparisons between the two communities, and by God, is there a difference between the two? Now, if you think I'm just sitting here glazing Warframe and digital extreme, I'm gonna bring up one other studio. Matter of fact, I could bring up a few more studios, but I'll just bring up this one. CD Projekt Red released Cyberpunk in one of the worst states you could ever release a game, literally making it unplayable.
This looks like Mind's Eye.
On consoles. All the goodwill they had accumulated over the years essentially evaporated with that launch. I can't tell you the countless videos that were coming out absolutely and rightfully dogging CD Projekt Red. But then something happened. CD Projekt Red didn't just double down, they tripled down. They announced DLCs that were coming. They did updates to the game, most of which you would only see in a live game. And they simultaneously launched Edge Runners, which is a fantastic show that was interwoven into the cyberpunk world. CD Projekt Red showed all of us that they were willing to make good at whatever means necessary. And boy, did they. I spent the better part of
They brought it back. They did. Cyberpunk brought it back. You know what other game did a really good job of that? No Man's Sky. No Man's Sky, whew, they really brought it back as well.
Last year, playing completely through Cyberpunk, and despite the multiple hiccups that game faced at launch, the post experience, at least for me, completely made up for it. Now fast forward to this year. During Unreal Engine's 5.6 showcase, we got to see The Witcher 4 in action. And even though, yes, Witcher is a completely different game than Cyberpunk, the point is, had CD Projekt Red never made good with Cyberpunk, I myself would have been less enthusiastic about The Witcher 4. And this has come from someone that absolutely adores The Witcher 3. Hell, at CD Projekt Red left Cyberpunk the way it was when it first launched, I probably wouldn't have even purchased or even considered purchasing any other content from them ever again. But they made good. They sustained their goodwill, and they were able to cash out on it with their future endeavors. I'm a firm believer in how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's a common statement that you yourselves have probably heard, but it's something that's very common even in business. And sure, yes, studios out there from a development standpoint definitely have hit or misses, but it's the willingness to stick by your community, even if it cuts into profits, just to sustain goodwill. That right there is how a community is formed. We've seen this time and time again. Even Final Fantasy XIV, when it first launched, was, quote, a commercial and critical failure. It was so bad that even Square Enix's president acknowledged the game's failure. Yet Yoshida and his team, they didn't just double down. They relaunched the entire game. They gave us Final Fantasy XIV: A Realm Reborn, with the primary focus being regaining players' trust. You see, Bungie is well aware of this. Even in their own GDC conference years ago, delivered by Justin Truman, who is now the VP, he laid it out himself. First comes trust, then retention, then revenue. Now,
and how many times can we do this cycle though, right? First trust, retention, revenue, right? How many times, how many cycles can you go through before your community is completely exhausted, okay? Bungie sits at this GDC conference at the top of the mountain where they are basically the kings of the live service industry, right? They were some of the first to transition over from a box service game to live service, and they did so very well, right? They got in early and they got ahead of the race. Well, now the race has caught up to them. There's many other live service games out there. There's many other free-to-play live service games out there, and Bungie has continued the cycle again and again and again. Trust, retention, and revenue, but eventually people just lose disinterest, right? Especially when you're talking about over delivery and you're trying to deliver less and less content year after year after year.
Listen, whether you like the GDC talk or not, it's kind of whatever. I would argue and say it's a very clear way of looking at live service games. You need trust, you need player retention, and then you should seek out abilities to profit. My concern right now with Bungie is where they think they are at in that stage. I don't think they're foolish enough to think that they're in a revenue stage, but perhaps they think they're in a retention stage. My argument would be that we're already back to square one. We need to have trust in Bungie. Many people are speculating that the Edge of Fate is just Bungie trying to give us the bare minimum product at the lowest cost possible. And that's not how you build trust. That's a revenue standpoint, which I still don't even believe that should be part of Destiny's process, or really any game development's process that's trying to compete in this space where the competition is only getting better. And we're not even talking about Marathon's competition, which is stacked. But even in Destiny's space, we're actually seeing for the first time other games popping up.
The Cube.
Cube was one that was recently announced, and that game is looking to be bringing everything it can to compete directly with Destiny 2. When you drop your own trailer and Destiny 2 is in your tags, and even your CEO comes out and says that Destiny 2 was a big inspiration for the game, that tells you right there, this is not another Anthem 2.0. Anthem wouldn't even acknowledge that Destiny existed, despite literally inviting every Destiny creator in the space. I have no idea what BioWare's plan was, and it's clear they didn't have a plan either. What I will
RIP Anthem. It should have been given another chance. It should have been. Sell the IP to someone and let them bring Anthem back. Anthem Resurrections, dude. That's what I want to see.
say though to Bungie directly on this is you're back to square one, and this applies to everything you're working on. First is trust, and that should literally be the focus for potentially the next few years. And I'm not saying that Bungie shouldn't make money. Look, man, I get it. It's a business. You want to make money, make money. But I'm so fearful that we're in that revenue stage, and that's all Bungie is seeing right now. When we have
This is an excellent video. This is an excellent point as well, because I really strongly agree with Aztecross here, where they should really try to build trust within the community. It feels like it's been broken. We're definitely back to square one. Maybe they were going with Edge of Fate initially in their sort of, revenue thing like they've talked about, or retention, like he mentioned, right? If you're breaking it down into those three categories. But after the Marathon disaster, and after everything they've revealed thus far with Edge of Fate, we're definitely in the trust phase, unless the developer live stream, which is happening tomorrow, by the way. If you haven't seen, it's going to be a massive developer live stream. We'll be watching that together. Unless they deliver something huge with that, which I doubt, because they've already shown everything through the streamers. Then I think that, we're back in the trust stage for sure. I agree with this opinion strongly.
Have neither the trust or goodwill or even the player retention right now to afford Bungie cashing out. When one of Bungie's biggest selling points for the year of Destiny content that's coming is literally Renegades, which is like some sort of Star Wars spinoff. And look, I'm fine with Star Wars, but that 1000% screams cash out. Money bags are on the mind. When it's been revealed to us that the directory won't even have a destination that you can click on for the new destination, that being the Kepler destination Edge of Fate, when your next suite of abilities are really just destination abilities that are not very exciting to folks. Yes,
thank you. Oh my gosh, I agree with that. One, it should obviously be in the destination area. It should not just be all in the new, abbreviated area. And then secondly, I think there's no lost sectors. At least they said there's no lost sectors so far. That's a big problem. The destination specific abilities also weird, right? We want more universal abilities.
I'm excited about the systematic changes. I'm excited about the lore and the narrative. I'm excited about builds. I think builds are going to be great. But I can tell you right now, I don't pay Bungie's bills. And just comparing this year's numbers to last year's numbers and just gauging the hype levels, fellas, I'm kind of concerned. If you're telling me Ride of the Nine is supposed to compare to Into the Line and Pantheon, ain't no way in hell. We're talking the difference between an entirely new activity and a blend of raids that literally was like raid boot camp going into final shape versus old dungeons that brought back some old loot with different roles that most of you are probably going to discard once we get into Edge of Fate. And I would argue and say that the numbers speak for themselves. Bungie, you are at an inflection point with your community. Now is the time to develop goodwill across the board. This applies to not
I agree strongly.
just Destiny, but also Marathon. Listening to hosts talk about Marathon, giving us corporate dialogue, ain't gonna cut it. And I know that meeting wasn't necessarily meant for us. It's meant for investors. As if that's supposed to make a big difference for me. It doesn't. I could give a shit less if you own Sony stock. And for my long-term bag holders, congratulations. Sony stock actually just retook its high that had not been reached since 1999. Hot damn, that's a long time. But regardless though, I don't care about the corporate talk. I just want Bungie to know themselves that they are back to building trust again, and that should be the focus over the next year. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think.
Excellent video from Asdacross here. I appreciated his opinion on Bungie really needing to build and develop the trust within the community, especially if they want Marathon to be a success. I think that they're well aware of that at this point in time. Obviously, you have, Justin Truman at that GDC conference infamously, giving that speech. So that's their sort of blueprint of how they build things up for their live service games like Destiny 2 and like what Marathon is meant to be. It's meant to be a live service game, right? So trust is going to be a very difficult thing to do. And obviously they're both at two different points at time right now. Marathon is at its launch point, and building trust at the very beginning is going to be more difficult than a game like Destiny 2 that has so much more of an establishment, right? There's an established player base. There's, everyone knows Destiny 2. Even if you don't play Destiny 2, like if you just play any other video game, you've at least heard of it and you know that people enjoy this game and you've heard of Bungie. You've obviously heard of Halo at some point in time. So they're on two completely different trajectories, but they're both at the starting phase where they really need to build trust. So I strongly agree with Cross on that opinion. And let me know what you think about it down in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe to this channel with notifications on. Smash the like button for me, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.